I'm here with the next week's lesson of my animation school. This week we will be, getting into the nitty-gritty of actually animating stuff. Last week I gave you a small tour of Brablx and Maya, and I showed you how to import stuff and export things and do all that jazz, setting up a human IK rig and all that good stuff. So now, basically what we're going to do, we're going to focus on one of the key principles of animation, squash and stretch, and we're also going to have a look at the 3 stages of creating animated actions. So the anticipation, the action, and the reaction. But before I do that, I quickly just want to show you something in Brablx real quick. Just with regards to viewing models in Brablx. So here I've got Sonic, and basically in the more recent versions of Brablx, and by more recent I basically mean anything beyond like 0.7, maybe even 0.69, you're able to view like all of the characters' animation types. So in previous versions of Brablx, you could only look at CRHOs, which were basically the main animations, the main model animations. But now you can also look at SRTOs, I forget what those are, SHPOs, which are like shape animations. Very few characters have those. I think only like Link has them. PATOs, which are texture animations, like Toon Link's face. Visos, model visibility animations, which are basically control character expressions. Most characters have these. SCN, I don't quite remember, and CLR, I think, are color animations. These two you barely see much of with regards to actual characters, but CRHOs and Visos and PATOs you'll see a fair amount. Oh no, wait. SRTs, I believe, controls what eyes. They control what stuff like eyes do. Eye movement, basically. Texture animations for single animations. So yeah, as you can see, Sonic looks a bit weird. Basically, this is because all of his expressions here are there at once. So he looks like some kind of freak of nature. Also turn off his masks so that we see his blue. But when we load up his character animation file, when we click on an animation, those expressions go away. I'll also remove this. So it's just set itself to the Viso expressions of Sonic's face. So look at the keyframes here. And here, let me make this a bit bigger if I can. I don't think I can, I'm not sure. Hold on. Nah, it's fine. But here in the bottom left corner, you can see like face pattern, angry head. And these basically control his expressions. If it's checked at constant, that means it will never appear throughout the animation at all. If it's not checked, then you can check individual keyframes at where they'll appear. So in this case, he'll have his eyes closed at frames 42 and 43 of his idle. As you can see here, and here. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Oh, another important thing to note. The reason why these frames here are actually one frame before this frame here. So I have 43 selected here, but it's 44 here. These frames actually match the in-game frames. So basically, frame 1 in this animation is actually you won't see it in-game. Basically, it's either frame 1 or the last frame of an animation. But basically, when you're thinking of animations for like attacks and stuff, it's not too important for actions that don't really do anything, like idles. But for attacks, you need to think one frame shorter than the animation you're making, basically. So like if you want an attack to hit on frame 8, this number needs to be frame 9. And yeah, that's basically just a quick demonstration of that. I'll also show you guys the PATOs real quick. So Toon Link is a good example. There he is, because his face is textured, obviously. Right, so here we can see that various of his polygons have this kind of like outline here, and basically these control like visibility of the texture. So here his mouth is set at the 0 expression on this frame. Actually no, we don't need to go there. I think his expression, oh no, but here during these few frames it changes to this expression. Here we have mouth 7. These two are his eyes. These two are his Final Smash eyes. I think these are his eyebrows. Let me make these invisible. It might be a bit easier to see. I'm not 100% sure on those. But yeah, that's basically just going through that. Alright. So now that we've done all that, let us begin actually animating. So squash and stretch basically is, well, pretty much self-explanatory. The motions of squashing and stretching throughout the animation. This is important for two key reasons. One, they're what give weight to animations. They're what give weight to certain actions. They help us understand where weight is being distributed and how it's being distributed. And two, they help increase character appeal. I'll give a good example. Pac-Man in Smash 4 is a really good example. A lot of his animations make really great use of squash and stretch. He feels like very kind of bouncy in the way that he moves. Like, look at his rolls, for instance. He literally just bounces. Just a lot of his actions feel very kind of squishy almost. There's a cool appeal to him thanks to the use of squash and stretch. One of the basic exercises, as you can see here, for understanding squash and stretch is the bouncing ball. I did this last year during my first year at university. I did a animation assignment on involving two bouncing balls and basically how they'd interact and squash and stretch with each other. These examples here are actually very exaggerated. For real life balls, they don't really compress this much, even really squishy balls. But they help you understand the general idea. Most of the time it's kind of normal, but then when you're nearing, but as your object is accelerating, it stretches and then squashes as it lands, and then stretches again as it bounces up again. Now with applying this to characters, we want to use squash and stretch to express, as I said before, weight shifts. As a result, the best way for me to do this is to create a quick jumping animation so that you guys can understand just like where the key weight shifts are. So first let me edit my settings so that, what am I doing? There we go. No, not this one. No, not that one. This one. Alright. 60 FPS. I almost forgot how to use Maya for a second. So yeah, I'll quickly get put into like a, oh, I don't want his feet rooted. Like a quick kind of rough idle animation. I picked Pit for a reason, by the way. I'm going to be using him for a couple of tutorials, a couple of the lessons, because there's a lot that I can demonstrate with him, because he's, you know, he's very good for what I want to use, for what I want to do, basically. Alright. Hopefully you guys from last lesson have had a quick little play around with Maya as well, if you've been able to download it and stuff. Playing around and experimenting is one of the best ways to learn, in my opinion. Just do it! Right, I think I'll also make his bow. I'll make it invisible for the time being. Hide selection, so we just have his arms. Right, cool. So we got a basic pose from here. Now he's ready to jump. Alright. So as he is now, he's pretty neutral. He's neither too stretched or too squashed. So what we want to do at the start of a jump, obviously you kind of bend your knees down and then you stretch up as you try and lift off the ground. And depending on the force of your jump, you kind of hold the pose. So yeah, that's basically what we want to do here. So I'll skip to frame 6, 5 frames forward. For now, what I'm going to do with this episode, I'm just going to focus on his legs and his upper body. I'm not going to do anything with his arms, so the animation will look a bit weird, but there's a reason for this. I want to save what I'm going to be doing with his arms and his other parts of his body. I'm going to be saving that for next lesson. In fact, because of that, I'm actually going to keyframe body sections individually. Oh, I didn't keyframe his chest. Silly me. Actually, I'll redo all that. Just bend it down. Alright, so now, since we want this strong jump to look quite strong, I'll have him hold this pose for 10 frames. That's 1/6 of a second. So that's within Smash, that's a pretty decently long hold. when you're doing holds in pretty much anything, you never want your character to be completely still. You always want slight movement. This is called a moving hold. It's pretty self-explanatory. Alright, so now that we've got the squash, it's time to get him to do the stretch. Let me pin his toes to the ground. In fact, I don't even want it on this bone. I'm actually going to do it here. Only 3 frames later. Oh. Push this a bit forward. It's all going to seem kind of weird at first, but that's part of the process of animating. Stuff will just look wrong until it's done. Let me push this hip a bit further this way here. Alright. Right, so what do we have so far? Yep, that's pretty good. Alright, let me try and play this in real time. Alright, so you already get a sense of the general weight distribution. Let me edit his head during this frame so that it stays down. There we go. Alright, so at this point, as we saw with the bouncing ball, the movement at which it travelled was kind of like an arc. I unfortunately closed the tab, so I don't have it immediately, but you could see with the bouncing ball it travelled in an arc. That was one of the key things to understand with how squash and stretch, and in fact not just squash and stretch, how movement is in general. Movement is all done in arcs. So as you can see here, it's not immediately apparent, but the flow of his movement isn't like, it's not completely linear. Otherwise he would just you know, he would go down at a constant speed, he would stop, then he'd go up at a constant speed, and then he would stop. But that's not how organic stuff moves. It's all very it moves in arcs, as I said. Alright, so this jump will be pretty floaty because I'm gonna have him in the air for 10 frames. Oops, don't want that. I'm actually going to push this leg down a bit and have it follow up afterwards. Alright, so let's have a quick look. Let's have a quick look at how this looks. Obviously, the follow through of his legs is a bit weird at the moment. That's because there's no hip movement at the moment during those frames. I'm actually going to have these follow through a bit earlier, since I think they follow through too late now. Alright, so as you can see, we got the squash at the apex of his jump. Actually, let me shift his legs back up here. Push this down. Is that a decent position? Should be okay. Yeah, it's at about the same height. Actually, I might do it a bit higher. At the moment it's kind of weird because there's not enough float to the animation. We'll just get the general positions in at first, and then we can fix that in a bit. Right, so this frame is important. The landing frame is probably where the most notable stretch is. Apart from the launching frame. I actually forgot to edit these frames in the other keyframes, so they're going to look a bit weird at the moment. Oh, I forgot to keyframe this bone. That's annoying. That's fine though. Actually, this movement as a whole is probably a bit too slow. And the leg movement is kind of off. That's fine. I can modify all of this pretty easily. Yep, okay. Shift this